back in June of 1985. I just finished my freshman year of college at the University of Wisconsin. I was coming off an injury and really hadn't run a lot, but I was starting to get into some mileage, and our family decided to take a trip to Finland, and we planned this for a long time. So I was very grateful to kind of get in a new place and kind of start over so I could enter my sophomore year with a little bit more energy. But we went to Finland, and I could not wait to get there. My father was born in Helsinki, and he came across when he was 13 years old across the Atlantic, and all the stories I'd heard about Finland and all the family lore and everything. My grandfather Atu was a Finnish war hero. He fought the Russians during the Winter War and then again in the Continuation War, and I couldn't wait to see Finland for the first time. And we were going to meet some family, and I couldn't wait to meet the family, people I'd never met. And so we flew into Helsinki. It's the very 1st of June, and we get to Helsinki, we had dinner, and the next day we actually went to the train station. We took a train to Joensuu, which is in eastern Finland, the northern part of eastern Finland, and the train actually goes very close to the Russian border, and it's about a 5-hour train ride. And we got to Joensuu, and my cousin, my father's cousin, met us there with his little car to pick us up, and they embraced. And my father speaks fluent Finnish, but our cousin spoke no English, and we spoke no Finnish, so my father was our translator, and it was very obvious that they had been very close. They were very glad to see each other, and we all piled into this really small car. Very small car. There were 5 of us, the 4 of us and the family, and my mom and my dad, my sister and I, and our cousin was driving, and all of our luggage didn't fit in the trunk, so we had to hold on to it. And we drove quite some ways, quite some distance from Joensuu to a place on his dairy farm on a lake. And at the time, I think it was one of the largest dairy farms in that part of Finland, or it was a large dairy farm, quite a few head of dairy cows, and on this lake called Viinijärvi, which loosely translated means wine lake. Absolutely gorgeous and picturesque. And I remember after dinner he was talking about his dairy farm, and going to Wisconsin, it was very interesting to me because one of my teammates came from a dairy farm, and I'd heard some of these stories, and very similar stories, but it was a much smaller dairy farm than that in northern Wisconsin, but still fascinating nonetheless. And the next day we had a nice breakfast, and I asked if I could go for a run. I was trying to build up my mileage again to kind of get back into it, and so my dad said, "Oh yeah, you need to." Okay, so I asked, where can I go? Are there any trails I can run? I love running trails. And my father spoke to our cousin in Finnish, and cousin got very serious and said a few things to my dad, and then said some things that I was a little bit repetitive, and then he said something else again, and I heard the same words, and my father said, "Okay, go out the driveway here to the main road, but stay on the main road. Do not, you'll see a lot of nice trails, but don't run those trails. You'll see some 2-tracks and country roads, but stay on the paved road. Even if you see something that looks enticing, it's very muddy and it's springtime here, and it's better to stay on the paved road." I said, "Okay, I will stay on the paved road." They said it 3 times, I might as well. So I went out for my run, and one thing I didn't mention, the day before we left Michigan, I went out for a run behind our house, and came upon this. I ran these trails all through high school, and I came out this trail to this house, and I saw this German Shepherd. I had seen him many times before, but he was always in his pen, and this time he was not, and he attacked me. It turned out to be an ex-police dog, and he chewed up my shoulder something fierce, just bit the heck out of my shoulder, and I had bite marks all the way up and down my arm. So I had to go to the med clinic and get a tetanus shot, but the tetanus shot was not what was bad. Being attacked by a dog on a run is not something I would encourage anyone to try. So I was a little bit skittish of dogs. So as I went on this run in Finland, I saw my first dog run across the road into this trail, and I was not about to follow him, but he didn't have a collar, and he didn't have a leash. Like, good grief. In Michigan, you at least they have to have a collar. But as I went, down the road some more, I saw another couple kind of standing in the forest a little ways, and they ran off on this trail. I thought, gosh, everybody's got a dog up here, but they don't have them leashed or penned or anything. And so I came back, and how was the run, Rusty? Everything was great. Thanks. It was great. I had a really good run. I love the clean air here. It's absolutely fantastic. And they said, well, did you go on any trails? I said, no, you said to stay on the paved road, so that's exactly what I did. I said, what is it here with the dog laws? Because I had learned that, you know, every dog in Michigan has to have a collar and they have to be under control. And they said, oh, those aren't dogs that you saw. Those are wolves. And that's why we told you to stay on the paved road. So we had lunch, and then my cousin Keo, who's about my age, he asked if I wanted to go with him through my dad, of course, to out into the lake to check the fish traps. So this is springtime, and they can actually set fish traps, and they live a lot off of a lot of the land in Finland. The natural food is just fabulous. So I went with him on this rowboat, and we checked the fish traps, like 4 or 5 of these, and there's these little pike, you know, not big enough to eat and certainly not big enough to keep. So Keo let those go, and we set the traps in a little deeper water. And I love to fish, so that was very exciting to see how they do this. And we came back, and after lunch we went to another cousin's house. Oh gosh, maybe a mile and a half down the road on the same lake. And we came to this place, and it was out of a postcard. If you think of the most beautiful place you can that is in Finland, this is it. This fits all the descriptions. A beautiful wooden house, not huge, but very cozy, absolutely gorgeous, on this peninsula. And at the end of this peninsula is a sauna, and there's a long dock. I could see this dock goes way out into the water. And so we went to the sauna. I was really looking forward to taking a sauna. You know, after my run, it's always good to have a sauna. I grew up taking saunas, and I couldn't wait to get into a real Finnish sauna. I would taken some very hot ones growing up. I remember my first sauna at deer camp. I was 14. I'll never forget that night as I was going to bed, I got something that was bothering my shoulders. Like, what is this? I went in the bathroom, and I had some blisters on my back from the sauna. And as I look back and think of that story, I think I was the only sober one in the sauna. So it helps lubricate everybody up a little, I guess. So I've been in some real hot saunas, and of course a Finnish sauna means you strip right down to the raw. So we got in there, and there were 5 of us. There was to my dad's 2 cousins and my father, and then Keo, who's my age, and me. I think it's important to say that I weighed 130 pounds soaking wet. I was a distance runner. This is many years ago. And all the other guys were all about 200 pounds, maybe a little bit more. So we got into the sauna, and there was a cousin, and then me, a cousin, my dad, and a cousin. And they put their arms through our arms and sat us up straight and started throwing water on the sauna stove, and the steam started coming up, and it was hot. I mean, it was hot, but nothing like my deer camp saunas. It was nice. And I asked my dad, what was that all about? And he said, I don't know, but I'm a little offended. I'm going to find out what's going on. So as he went to talk with his 2 cousins, and I went out and looked at Keo, who's again my age, and there was this beautiful wall between this peninsula and the water, and it was quite high up. And I said, I'd like to go for a swim. Can I jump in? And Keo told me in Finnish, I don't understand what you said. So I said, I pointed to myself, and I said, me, jump, water, swim. He goes, he knew exactly what I meant. And he took me over between these 2 boulders and looked at me quite sternly and said, jumping out. Okay. So I looked down, and sure enough, if I jumped straight down, I would have hit myself on the rocks. And it was very shallow right there, but just a few feet out, it got really deep. So I said, okay. So I backed up, and I ran, and I jumped out, and I hit this water. And as soon as I hit the water, it occurred to me that this is maybe the 3rd day of June. I've been in some very cold water in my day. We like to swim, but this is the coldest water I think I've ever felt. It shocked me, and oh my gosh, I'm Finnish, so we like to do these kind of things. But this one, If this water was 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I'd be surprised if it was that warm. I am thinking it maybe was more like 38 degrees Fahrenheit. So I started swimming a little bit, and I looked and I couldn't climb out. This rock wall was a little too high. There's no ladder or anything. So I looked out into the lake, and the only place I could go was to the end of this very long dock. And from the water, it looked foreboding. It was so long. This dock was long. So I started to do the breaststroke, and oh my gosh, this water's cold. I flipped over into my back to get some sun on my stomach, and so I did a backstroke a little bit, and then I did some more of the breaststroke, and I'm still not at the end of the dock. And I rolled over on my back, and I'm doing the backstroke, and so finally I'm close. So I start doing the freestyle to get some distance in. I finally got to the end of the dock, and I was able to climb. Thank God there was a ladder, because I'm not sure I could have pulled myself out. But got out of the dock, onto the dock, and I walked straight into the sauna and started pouring the water on there. And I must have been there for quite some time, because when I finally got dressed, showered and dressed, I went back in the house, and everybody was waiting for me for dinner. And so we had this fabulous dinner, Finnish food. Oh my gosh, it's absolutely delicious. I think my second favorite pastry of all time is the Karjalan piirakka. It's a Finnish pie, or Karjalan pie is what they call it, but it's like a rye pancake, almost like a rye tortilla, if you will. And it's got rice pudding in it, and they pucker these things up. They look like moccasins, and they're just delicious, absolutely delicious. You soak them with butter, and you put eggs on them and everything. And I think the most fabulous thing we had that night, though, was the moose. Somebody had shot a moose earlier that winter, and they served this moose 3 different ways. It was absolutely the best meal I think I've had. Certainly in Finland, it was delicious, home cooked. And when supper was over, the men all went out to have some kaljas, which is Finnish for beer. And my dad approached me as we were heading out, and he said, "Hey, what did you do?" I said, what are you talking about? He said, "Well, I talked to these guys, and they said the reason they did that with their arms to sit us up straight, they wanted to show us what a real Finnish sauna was like." And I said, "Dad, it wasn't that hot." He says, "Yeah, I told him you come to Michigan, come to deer camp, and we're gonna make some Michiganders out of you." But he said, "No, I told him our saunas are pretty hot, so that was nothing." And they all said, "Well, that boy of yours is crazy." He said, "What did you do?" I said, I didn't do anything. What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, Ko said that you did something." I said, "Oh, I jumped in the lake." And my dad looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me? The ice broke on Tuesday." This was like the following Friday. I said, "Yeah, I know that now." He said, "Seriously, that water's got to be under 40 degrees. I said, "Believe me, I know." They said, "Well, Ko said that you jumped in without hesitating, and that you just went out for this leisurely swim all the way out to the end of that long dock." I said, "Yeah, I was trying not to seize up." And he said, "Well, they said you're definitely Aatu's boy." And I honestly can't think of a better compliment than anyone's ever given me.